Well, good evening. I want to give you an update on the approaching storm Dorian, of course, creating incredible amounts of damage down in the Bahamas. Rare Category 5 storm, the strongest ever to hit the Bahamas. Now it has weakened, but it's still a formidable storm working its way toward the Carolinas and Virginia. So in the area here in orange, we are under a tropical storm warning. That means we expect within 36 hours tropical storm force winds. That means over 39 miles per hour, but not over 75. Over 75 is the area south of the state line, and that's in purple, and that is the hurricane warning. So hurricane warning, tropical storm warning, and then in yellow, back across our far northern and western parts of the viewing area, we have tropical storm watch. That means possibly we could see some tropical storm force winds. We also have a storm surge warning, and that is basically for our entire viewing area other than the eastern shore and the middle peninsula. But everybody else looking at the possibility of storm surge values as high as 2 to 4 feet. Now, this isn't the total amount of water. This is the amount of water above a normal high tide. If we were to get lucky and be on the low end of the range, we have abnormally high tides right now because of just astronomical effects. You know, the full moon and that kind of thing, new moon, whatever it is right now, is giving us one of the higher tides that we have during the year. So you add, it's over 3 feet at times. So you add a 3-foot regular high tide that we were going to have, even if it was perfect conditions, with 2 feet additional, and you're talking 5 total feet of water. Take that, and that doesn't do much. That's, you know, on the low end of minor flooding. You take that 3-foot normal tide, bring the storm through, add a high tide time, and add 4 feet to that, and you're talking 7 feet, which is only about 10 inches below Isabel. So I know that's a broad range, but it'll depend in part on when it hits. And again, we're going to watch very carefully the exact track. You can see the storm getting a little better organized at one point today, so the wind field actually increased 5 miles per hour. And it's at 110 as of the 9 o'clock advisory. And still, the path expected to work its way right off of South Carolina, off of North Carolina, somewhere over the Outer Banks. And don't take this red line to be exact. This area here, or any of these positions, will only stay inside of the entire cone 2/3 of the time. So 1/3 of the time, it will be outside of the cone itself. So you can imagine there's a very high percentage of the time that it's off by at least 50 or 60 miles, and that'll make a big difference here as to what we see. Two of the models that we really follow are the American GFS model and the European model in red, and they're pretty much identical right through tomorrow evening at this time, and then identical as well as we get into Friday in terms of the path. They both have a storm just about over the Outer Banks here and then over Cape Hatteras and heading off to the northeast. There are a couple of other models, however, that are a little bit back inland. Here are the Outer Banks. Here is Cape Hatteras. If the storm is 20 miles up the Outer Banks or 40 miles up the Outer Banks, more near, you know, let's say Kitty Hawk or Kill Devil Hills, we have a huge amount of issues here, major problems that would cause versus if it's down here near Buxton or south and east of there. So the exact track is going to also determine who gets the heaviest rain. This is fairly old. This is the last run, though, of the European model. Historically, the most accurate model year after year after year. And it has the storm, again, right across the southern Outer Banks. And therefore, these amounts, you can see the brown starts at 5 inches up to 7, 8, 9, 10 inches down here in extreme eastern North Carolina. And then Hampton Roads is in the sort of 2 to 5 or roughly 2 to 5 category, falls off pretty sharply north and west. Now, the American model, and this one is a little newer. This is only a few hours old, and it has a swath here of 5 to about 7 inches in Southside Virginia, northeast North Carolina, and then again down here across parts of the southern Outer Banks. Not as much, 2 to 5, sort of where the eye, or closer anyway, to where the center of the system is located, and then still that very sharp drop-off. If we were to get rainfall like we did with Matthew brought a foot of rain. We do not expect a foot of rain. It is not out of the question. I'd say the odds are about 15%, 10 to 20% that we get as much rain as we did with Matthew. Even if we do, however, the rainfall from June, the year that Matthew approached us, until its arrival the first week of October, we were 14 inches above normal. That is 3 months worth of rain extra during the summer. And in fact, in just the 1 month before the storm hit, we were almost 9 inches above normal. 14 inches total for the month, and 9 inches above total, almost 9 inches above total for the previous month above normal. So that's why the ground was so soggy and saturated. The extra rain came in, there was nowhere for it to go, and that's why we had flooding in places that aren't low-lying, but just that you couldn't get the water to run off, especially parts of Virginia Beach, some of the places like Windsor Woods, etc. Rainfall from Dorian has only been 2 inches above normal, give or take, since the start of June. That's a huge difference. The previous month here, we're only 2 inches above normal as well. So things have been a lot drier. So with the current path, we'll see if it changes at all, but with the current path and the current intensity forecast, late Thursday and really more like during the day Friday for inland Hampton Roads, you'll have northeasterly winds that'll eventually shift to northwesterly, 30 to 40. And far inland areas, it might only be 20 to 30 even, gusting maybe as high as 50 miles per hour. Big spread in the rainfall with the highest amounts being off to the east, and then some moderate impacts from some maybe moderate flooding. Inland areas of North Carolina, similar, 30 to 50, but gusts as high as 70 miles per hour, 3 to 8 inches of rain, moderate to maybe major flooding, depending on the exact track and whether we get some of these inland areas in terms of inundation. We get a little bit more of the water flowing in with that storm surge up some of the rivers. Northern Outer Banks, thinking as 40 to 60 mile per hour winds. So again, that's right sort of in the middle of tropical storm force strength. Starts at 40 miles per hour or 39 and runs all the way up to 74. So that's right in the middle, basically, a moderately strong tropical storm with gusts over hurricane force. 4 to 8 inches, locally higher, major tidal flooding, and the high overall impact. And then you get down to the southern Outer Banks, and that's where things could really get bad. Sustained, this could even be underdoing it. 50 to 80 miles per hour with gusts 90 plus, even 100 miles per hour. Very, very possible. Locally, rain could be as high as 5 to 10 inches. Major flooding and a very significant overall impact. For coastal Hampton Roads, meaning Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Norfolk, really even, winds 40 to 55, gusting to 65. If we get some of these heavier rain bands with the thunderstorms in them, we could be seeing some gusts up into the 60 mile per hour range. That would knock down some trees. More on that coming up in a minute. Definitely knock down branches at least, which would start to cause some power outages. Let's say 3 to 6 inches of rain, major tidal flooding, and it might be the high end of moderate. That's what I want to talk about here. Major starts at 6.5, so it's not inconceivable we could get 6.3, 6.4, which would be the very highest portion of the moderate category. And then major flooding starts at 6.5 feet. Right now our thinking is 6.5 to 7, so the low end of what's considered, quote, major flooding. I'll step out here and show you how that compares. Hurricane Isabel, 7.9 feet, and again, that's above the average of the lowest tides for a year. So every day we get anywhere from 2 to 3 feet of storm surge, or tidal surge, I guess I should say, from a normal astronomical high tide. Happens twice a day. Every day, twice a day, we get 2 to 3 feet, assuming perfect weather conditions. Add in the amounts, and you get these, again, numbers up here where we got 7.9 inches in Isabel. The record, by the way, is 8.02 or 8.03, the hurricane of 1933. Hurricane Irene, 7.56 was the total amount of water. Norida, the nor'easter of, I think, 09 it was, is also right about in there, 7.6 somewhere right in that general area. Dorian, we're expecting 6.5 to 7, and maybe even if we get lucky lower. It was 6 inches to a foot lower with Matthew than predicted. So let's keep our fingers crossed that happens. And Hermine, which came through in 2016 just before Matthew did, was 6.2, so pretty similar. And then Bonnie in 1998. Bonnie caused, again, not as many problems with the tidal surge as it did with some of the winds, but that too, again, had some impact, especially because of the fact that the ground was very saturated. Now we'll talk about the power outages. And this has changed just a little bit since I was on here and looking at this, practicing a few minutes ago. The numerous was up here about the state line in Knott's Island, back down through Elizabeth City. Not sure what has changed. This is based off computer models. It now puts isolated power outages, again, inland from the Middle Peninsula through Williamsburg West, and then from near the bay, including the Eastern Shore, back down through all of our viewing area in Virginia, and a lot of it in Northeast North Carolina, scattered outages, and then you get down Central Outer Banks south, numerous to widespread outages down there. So that's the very latest on the current thinking with Dorian approaching. Again, starting up in about 24 hours, but not getting bad for about another 36 or so. We'll have a lot more information coming up on the news at 11.